Sounds like a bit like a Johnny Clegg song. Everyone is looking for a saviour. In gyrating markets, central bankers are thought to be it. But in the last couple of weeks, we've seen central bankers getting nailed as not being the masters of the universe that maybe they thought they were. Maybe the guys who thought that the masters of the central universe were central bankers were also wrong. The global economy is moving forward, it would seem, alone. Maybe even it'll go backward. This is the MoneyMakers. I'm Bruce Whitfield. Tonight, Cai Rees, who's a director at SEI's institutional advice team, joins me. He provides us with some investment strategies in a world gone mad. I put it to you, Cai Rees, that the world's not mad. It's actually perfectly normal.
Well, it's certainly not mad, but it is rather fragile right now. And there's good reasons to think why the markets could get fragile. We've had a world where, for quite some time, we've had the Yellen put, before that Bernanke put, the Greenspan put. The question is that put still available?
Okay, now a lot of criticism of central banks and saying that central banks are supposed to be these great lever pullers. People are supposed to be freeing up capital to keep the global economy afloat. And actually, we're all being duped into thinking that the central banks have got any power really over what is going on in the global economy right now.
Well, they've got a lot of say. And they can keep rates for very low, for very long. And they can do more than that. They can create money. So there's plenty of reasons to be paying attention to what the central banks do. The question is, can they ultimately do enough?
No, but that is the big question. They've done a huge amount. America's got a huge amount of debt right now, sitting on trillions of dollars of brand new debt, courtesy of Ben Bernanke printing the hell out of the dollar. It hasn't done much for inflation. It hasn't done much for dollar weakness, and it's certainly not done much for growth.
No, crucially, it hasn't. Two of those things come together quite importantly. It hasn't done much for inflation, and it hasn't done much for nominal growth. That's what we're really after here. People have got debt, and the best way out of it, the way to get out of it without too much trouble, as in default currencies, is to do it through nominal growth. That's what we're waiting for.
Oh, what is going to drive that nominal growth? I mean, there's very little industrial production, there's very little consumption anywhere in the world right now. Economies aren't flatlining exactly. Japan's growing, not Japan, India is growing at 8 or 9%. We've got the Chinese still growing at 6%, yet that's not enough to carry the globe right now.
No, it hasn't been enough. There are two signs for hope. One is that eventually the oil price will come out of inflation calculations, and that will come at some point. The second is that we have employment at really good levels in the US and starting to look better across to Europe and also in UK. Once employment goes up, then wage growth goes up, and then a little further down the road, that's when inflation can go up.
But this is a terribly long, drawn-out cycle, isn't it?
It is, and that's kind of the criticism that central bankers have to deal with. People want answers in the short term, but they really only have the tools for the longer term.
So is it fair then to be pointing fingers at central bankers and saying you're not doing your job adequately?
I think it's expected. It's fair if they can point over a longer term record, and they have had some time on this, but have they had enough time? Have they had enough time of low unemployment and wage growth? Well, possibly not.
Okay. Now, you talked about oil just a moment ago, and we look at what's happening in the oil market. Oil at around $34 a barrel or thereabouts. Got a couple of countries coming together. You've got Saudi Arabia, Russia, Venezuela, Qatar saying, we're going to freeze production. We can't deal with this glut in the oil market anymore. We want oil prices to start rising. Do they have a hope in hell?
They don't have much hope. They have a reduced hope compared to the past. We live in a new world now. Most oil traders were not alive when the US were exporting oil. It's a new world. Oil is now going from the west to the east. We haven't seen this before, not in my lifetime, not in a lot of traders' lifetimes. So the ability to control the price has been reduced. There's fractures coming all over the place. Yes, Russia needs to get oil right now. Can they make a deal with OPEC? They could do something. Would it be enough? That's not the end of the story. We also have Iran.
And Iran is really interesting. I mean, I was in Davos and I saw the Iranian foreign minister up on stage with the chief of staff of the Iranian government, and they were bouncing. There's an energy and a lease of life that they're just looking to flood the world with oil. They haven't been able to sell their oil for a decade. Whether they get $25 or $30 or $35 at this point doesn't matter all that much. They need that foreign currency.
That's exactly right. I mean, what would you do if you're Iran and you've got all this oil? Some of it's in tankers waiting to be given to the world. What price is the right price? Almost any price.
So
It's the world we live in now.
So is that Iran? Is Iran really the critical point for 2016 in terms of what the growth outlook looks like for the globe?
It's positive. It's going to help. Iran has probably got more influence over the oil price than it had in the past. Is that going to translate to global growth? Well, yes. You see oil prices drop, and you wonder, is that a flag for the economy dropping? Well, no, I think it's a false flag.
But that's it, isn't it? Because, I mean, Michael Jordan, the ex-chief executive of FNB, posed a question on social media the other day, whether does low oil mean calamity, or is it the catalyst for growth? Surely it's got to be the catalyst for growth.
It has to be. It has to be. It'll come in through, well, we're already seeing it in some retail numbers, we're already seeing it in some consumer spending. That's the way that oil can transmit itself to the consumer economy across the West. The numbers are coming in, it's looking more positive. Now
imagine for South Africa as oil was sitting at $80 or $90 a barrel. We'd be dead in the water, would we not?
I wouldn't like to be in that world. It's thankful. That's a very good point. For many economies, it's more than just a little bit of an uplift. It's almost a lifeline.
Yeah, but oil has been our lifeline. It's been terrible for countries like Angola, countries like Nigeria, our continental brothers and sisters, struggling considerably under low oil. We're a big beneficiary of low oil. What we've got a problem with, though, is a currency. And our currency is letting us down very, very severely. State of the Nation last week, budget speech coming up in the next week or so. Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan making all kinds of lofty promises, including flying an economy on his way back from the State of the Nation address to Pretoria last week. Give me a sense of currency outlook. Is there any hope on a currency front for South Africa? Because we get a bit of currency strength, we get a bit of the benefit of a low dollar oil price.
Yeah, well, it's certainly nearer the bottom than it was last year. But are we at turnaround point? It's difficult to say.
What's going to be the catalyst for that turnaround point?
Well, one thing is inflation. That's not so much in control.
No.
When South Africa is running inflation sort of 5 to 10%, and the developed world is running around about 0, there's that headwind which doesn't look good. But I think the key thing would be to have a security on the investment credit rating.
Yes, absolutely.
If that keeps tight, the rand can look good.
I mean, we saw Standard & Poor's the other day saying there's a 1 in 3 chance of getting a credit downgrade. I beg your pardon, it's late at night, you'll know what it's like. But we get a ratings downgrade, there is a 1 in 3 chance. Those odds are still a bit too high for my liking. What do we need to keep the ratings agencies at bay? The President had a go in the State of the Nation speech, now we're looking for the numbers.
It's a tough one. It's going to take confidence, it's going to take some good statements from the Finance Minister, and it's probably going to take some good fortune from precedent. For example, you wouldn't want Brazil to lose its rating entirely, because once that door's open, it's very easy for South Africa to go through that door next.
Why? Why is there that risk of contagion?
Well, part of it's just the nature of things. Once one country loses its rating, you have to look around at comparable countries and wonder, well, why do they still have theirs? And pressure mounts on the rating agencies. So if nobody goes over that line, it helps South Africa and everybody else not go past that line.
From an investment perspective, I mean, the JSE All Share Index in the ballpark of 50,000. We've got a really nice surge back in the value of resources counters in the last couple of weeks. Big promises coming from Mark Cutifani at Anglo American. Massive potential restructuring in the South African resources sector, which opens up all kinds of new and exciting opportunities. Is it a place to be?
It's certainly a much better place to be in that respect. It's all going to come down to the restructure. How is it going to work, and who's going to benefit from that? It's a complicated job, but it's one to be hopeful about. People are almost ready for this now. Let's hope it works out well.
Financial sector, European banks in trouble. South Africa's financial sector quite neatly shielded, as it was in 2008, from the financial sector crisis. The South African banks weathered that storm, still very strongly regulated, very few exposures into oil markets, for example, into other parts of commodity markets worldwide that are under pressure. South African banks' dividend yields of 6 and 7% are looking quite tasty.
They do. From a dividend yield perspective, great. That's what I talk about.
So did African Bank just before it went down, but that's another issue altogether.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't go on dividend yield entirely, and you have to wonder what currency is coming in and what's happening at that. But with the European banks, it's been under a lot of heat recently, and it's taken Draghi to come out and sort of calm the waters down a little bit, sort of one of the things that they can do in the short term. European banks are much better capitalized than they have been for quite some time. Is this 2008?
No.
We don't feel like that at all.
No, it doesn't feel like 2008. Let's go full circle and finish off then. People are very critical of central bankers. People are very question the motives of central bankers. Yet, when the central bankers utter a few choice words that basically soothe the nerves of investors, we're all terribly happy to take those soothing words. There's a fair amount of hypocrisy around right now.
There is. Because they're so soothing, because they're so helpful, it's why we can be more tempted to point the finger at them when things aren't going like we would like them to.
We always pick on the weakest kid in the class, which is never a good sport, is it? Cai Rees, thank you very much indeed. Cai Rees is a director at SEI's institutional advice team, and his views on a world that is in a topsy-turvy state. But as we were talking about recently with Chris Gilmore and Sasha Narishkin, Tlelo Giyose a couple of weeks ago as well, you look at graphs over 30 and 40 years. I know some of you don't have that much time to wait for your investments to mature, but crises like these and uncomfortable times like these appear like mere pimples on the behind of the great big bull that is ultimately the long-term market. Thank you for watching. It's going to come back and bite me, I think. Until tomorrow, good night and goodbye.